Welcome everyone from Prince George's County Public Schools. I am Helen Coley, Chief of School Support and Leadership, and my colleague.
Hi, I am Judy White, Chief Academic Officer.
We thank you so much for being here with us on today. And we're certain that at the conclusion of this, you're going to be equally as excited as we are. We're going to hear from some great teachers on today, from the elementary, middle, and high school levels. And they have such great things to share about strategies that they're currently using in their classrooms. So we thank you for engaging with us today. This has been something else, hasn't it, Judy?
I mean, could you imagine that we would still be here right now with distance learning?
Would not have. Leaving school last March and then thinking that it would only be for a little bit of time,
right?
Become an extended period of time is simply amazing. But in spite of it all, our teachers and our schools and our students are continuing to persevere. So through this, we will get to where we ultimately would like to be, ensuring that school is a good place for students.
Correct. And we are excited because I know I couldn't sleep last night, and I know you probably couldn't either, because we have some rock star teachers who are going to come share and be a part of our panel today.
Yes.
I think we should try to meet them right now. What do you think?
But let me add this piece to it.
Okay.
We also need to share that we're also going to hear from some students at some point.
Absolutely.
So we're going to hear from some students. On this particular day, we're going to hear from high school students. At another time, we're going to also give an opportunity for our elementary and middle school students. But today is the opportunity for our high school scholars. And now, I would like to introduce you to one of our first teachers that is going to be a part of our panel discussion. Her name is Jamie. Jamie is a teacher at Langley Park International High School. She spends 10 to 15 minutes each day a week playing games with her students. She really likes to inspire them to be a part of the engagement process of learning. That helps kids to be comfortable, and it provides much needed support around the social piece element. Many of our students are saying to us that they don't have those opportunities as they once did. Mm-hmm. So Jamie gives ultimate priority to her classroom each day to ensure this provision. Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Welcome. And then we have Catherine Coaches, who comes to us from Capitol Heights Elementary School, where she teaches first grade. And Catherine's teaching tip is through the use of Zoom. She is able to have ample engagement with the students, and she uses Google Slides every day to present class materials and content. But she does so in a very interactive way with games such as Jeopardy. Welcome, Catherine.
We now will add to our panel, Nikki from Crossland High School. Nikki is a teacher of financial literacy. Her teaching tip is to get to know your students. In the absence of knowing your students, it limits what they can do academically. They are really affected by the pandemic, and this has not fully registered for them academically or emotionally, says Nikki. She too has embraced social emotional learning techniques and strategies early, and she gives them an opportunity to voice their feelings and opinions about improving distance learning. So in Nikki's classroom, she does provide an opportunity for student voice. Welcome, Nikki.
Welcome, welcome. And next we have Xavier Jones. He is a music teacher at Capitol Heights Elementary School. And Xavier's teaching tip is to utilize Zoom breakout rooms. They allow him to see his students in a smaller setting. That way he can give them individual attention and ensure that they master content. And we know how important that is. Welcome, Xavier.
Xavier.
Thank you all so much. I'm glad to be here.
Being here with us today. Sherry Britt is our next panelist, and Sherry is a mathematics teacher at Kettering Middle School. Sherry's teaching tip is to use the chat for the students to stay engaged. Students are more likely to participate if they can share their responses with the teacher privately. And you can also use the chat for group collaborative work amongst the students. So we welcome you, Sherry, and we can't wait to hear more about what you're doing in your classroom. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I am excited. I'm excited to have each of you here with us, and I'm excited about what you're going to share today and what you're going to help us understand and reveal to your colleagues. So again, on behalf of both of us, welcome to our Prince George's County Public Schools Fireside Chat. So question number one, and this I'm going to ask of Xavier and Catherine. As you've learned to navigate distance learning over the first quarter, and we've now moved into second quarter, what have been some of your biggest challenges and how have you overcome them?
Oh, thank you for asking that question. My initial biggest challenge was allowing my students to take full ownership of their learning in the virtual environment. That was something I was able to do much easier in the physical classroom because I was able to see, exactly what they were doing. I was able to see body language. That was a different thing when you're seeing them in the flesh in terms of the connection that you sometimes could make in terms of seeing if they truly understood content. So I really, and also with them being at home, they may have siblings, their environment, just the whole thing of it, particularly being in a music classroom because you're up singing, you're up dancing, you may be making instruments or trying to play instruments, just not knowing how that environment may have been at home was a challenge for me. Luckily, after my first observation, my principal gave me some wonderful feedback and she said, you know what? Just ask for volunteers. And I didn't even think of that. And that was clearly obvious, but it made me feel so much better because I realized once I started, asking for volunteers and allowing them to take ownership, their understanding of the content went to an entirely new level.
That is phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, one of my biggest challenges in distance learning has been adapting the curriculum into a virtual platform. So I overcome that by transforming the curriculum resources into platforms that are collaborative, such as using Google Slides that are interactive and having the students use Seesaw to hear their individual voices and so that they can choose how to show me what they've learned. And really, the resiliency I've seen in my students has given me and us the ability to create a virtual classroom environment that is really what we would see inside the physical school building.
Yeah. So two big words you said, ownership and resilience. And so in both of them, where we normally think of from an adult perspective, you have wrapped around children. And I think that was powerful. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
This is going to be for Jamie and Nikki. How do you organize and manage a Google Classroom in such a way that sets your students and yourself up for success?
Well, that has been a work in progress. So at the beginning of the school year, I was thinking about how to organize it, and I came upon the best way was to organize it by weeks. And so I began the school year organizing each topic, and each topic was that week that we were doing the assignments. And then what I did for the assignments under each topic is I titled them by the name or by the date that we had that class. As time went on, I realized that this was getting really long because, we've been coming to school for many weeks. So I had to kind of rethink my strategy and figure out a way to make it, less long for the students so they don't have to scroll so much. So then I kind of changed it up and I said, every time we start a new unit, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move all the assignments from that unit under a new topic with the title of the old unit, put those assignments there so the students can go back to it and see any assignments from our previous unit, and it won't have so many topics for them to have to go through. So I think that has been helping right now so far. And also one more thing that I do that helps my students, I teach at a school that has all English language learners. I'm at International High School, Langley Park. And so one thing that helps myself stay organized as well as the students is inserting emojis into the titles. So I came up with 5 different emojis and we call them our code, our emoji code. And at the beginning of the school year, I taught the students what each emoji stood for. For example, I have a laptop emoji, and that stands for this is an assignment that needs to be submitted and turned in. I have a folder emoji. The folder emoji are resources that they can go through if they need any help. And so I have those 5 different emojis, and I put them at the beginning of every post for them to know immediately what this post is about based on those emoji codes. So that's one way that I have helped my students, stay organized, and also myself stay organized on Google Classroom.
Awesome.
So a lot like Jamie did, I also organized my Google Classroom by weeks, because any teacher knows that Google Classroom can really get really long and out of order if you allow for it to. So I organized my classes by weeks, and it kind of acts as a calendar for the kids, for them to know that this is how many weeks we have in a quarter. This is when progress report is coming. This is when report card is coming. But I also use Google Classroom as a hub for resources. So they have several different topic areas that have resources like, what do I do if something's wrong with my laptop? Or what do I do if I'm sick from school? What is the attendance policy? I also tried to set it up in a way where I incorporated tutorial videos, so that if parents had to work with their students because the student maybe missed class because they had a tech issue or they were absent, they could go in and see what the lesson was that was taught in class, the actual lesson, and follow along. Those tutorials also help the students during their independent study time if they got stuck on something and they had a one-stop shop to go to find all the information they needed for virtual learning.
That tool sounds so engaging. Let's see it in action.
Hi, this is Mr. Kleino from Nicholas Orr Middle School. I'm just going to go through a couple of things that you could do on Google Classroom to help with your productivity and to help your students out. The first thing you can do is you can take this post where you talk about your sign in for Zoom and move it to the top. That way the students will always see that information at the top of their feed. The other thing that makes Google Classroom very helpful is to differentiate work by assigning work to different groups of students. So you can see today I had 2 different groups of different sizes based on their previous formative assessment. In order to do that, you just go to classwork, and when you select an assignment, like this one here, you just go here, and if I were to edit this, you can see which of the students you want to have in here. So in this case, I have 21 students that have this assignment. You can pick which students have it. And while we're here, another thing I wanted to talk about under the classwork tab is another thing you can do is you can organize your work under various topics. So for instance, in my class, I have current assignments, and I also have resources and past work from the second quarter, and then past work from the first quarter. This helps both you and your students organize the work. And to create a topic, you just go to create and topic, and you can just create your new topic from there. Hopefully this was helpful, and I'll help you use Google Classroom more efficiently.
Catherine and Nikki, how have you worked to build community in your classroom to keep students motivated and engaged? We often hear about sometimes students not wanting to show their screen. How have you managed to keep your kids motivated throughout this process?
So for me, I like to do 2 things. The first thing is every month when we have material pickup at our school, I send home a hands-on project for the students to do at home with their family members, which not only involves the family members, but it also motivates the students and lets them see their parents being involved in their learning. And I also like to create a classroom community where I consider that the students are not socializing outside of with their peers outside of this virtual classroom. So because of this, I give social time. I allot social time in each class for students to engage with one another. They spend time having free talk that may not be academically based, and they also play virtual games, or we have brain breaks and discussions that they're able to have with one another in a way that gives them that alleviation of stress and learning, and they're able to just kind of play with their peers in this new environment that we have.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, Catherine, because we have actually heard from some students that have shared with us that that's what they miss. Having that opportunity to socialize with their peers is certainly a missing element. So I appreciate you providing that and inviting that into your classroom space.
Thank you.
For me, I started the year really checking in with my own children. I have 4 children that are students in Prince George's County Public Schools, 2 high school students, 1 middle school student, and 1 handsome 4th grade gentleman. And I started my research with them. I just wanted to know, what did they think would make virtual learning better for them in the fall than what they experienced in the spring. So I would test things, I would show it to them, and I carried that same technique over into my classroom. One of the things that I really learned was to incorporate social emotional learning into our class, check-ins, just checking the temperature of the class. In high school, the kids don't cut on their screens. They are muted. So you have to find them. It's so hard to do that. But if you just do something simple like call attendance, and when they answer you back, you just say, "Good morning, how are you doing? Are you having a good day?" Yeah. And you will be surprised at how they'll answer you, and just happy to connect with someone. And then opening up the dialogue to say, how did the pandemic affect you? What is it about distance learning that you don't like? What is it something that I, as your teacher, could do better? What are some things that your other teachers are doing that maybe you think will work in this class? What are some things that I've done in this class that maybe didn't work so well? And so they become a part of designing the virtual learning that we're doing. And one of the other things that I really wanted to say, just because they're high school students, they miss that socialization with each other. And so I try to make sure I incorporate different things into the class that give them the opportunity to really just connect with each other in some kind of way, so that they don't feel overwhelmed and isolated and alone.
I appreciate that. Sounds like you both are doing a tremendous job in continuing to keep the students engaged. And that's what we have to do. This is a time that we never would have imagined for ourselves either. So for students, being as difficult as it is, keeping them engaged is paramount. So thank you both for that.
Yeah. So let's hear from our students.
Yes, this is an exciting part. I'm anxious to hear exactly how much our students are going to say. It mirrors what we've heard from our teachers on today.
Well, I like my English class because everything is just, there and open, and you could be yourself and you can ask questions and not be nervous. It's like, it feels like home. She's always engaging with the teacher, the students, and making sure everybody is okay, having a conversation with us. It's kind of like a mom at school. So that's how I feel. She's real understanding and down to earth, and that's what I like about her class. It just feels like I'm in her class, and I just can't wait to go back to school because it's very interesting. I want to be in a room with her and surrounded by her.
In my dance class, my teacher always lets us do daily check-ins, and she always asks us how we're doing before we start the lesson. So I really appreciate that, because she doesn't just jump straight into our lesson. She wants to make sure we're good, mentally, physically, emotionally. So that's what. And she always asks us how we're doing before we start the lesson. So I really appreciate that, because she doesn't just jump straight into our lesson. She wants to make sure we're good, mentally, physically, emotionally. So that's what.
Awesome, Kelly. Thank you for sharing. Would anyone else like to share?
Yes. In my women's studies class, my teacher, she's very, what do I want to say? She's very outgoing. She makes sure that everyone is okay. She doesn't leave anyone out when we're discussing lessons, or when we're going over things that we want to talk about, or topics that we want to write down for projects and things. She's very, she makes sure that we have a lot of interactive activities because she wants to keep us engaged since we're remote right now. We're not in the classroom. She makes it a habit to say good morning to every student who comes into her class. She's very caring. She's very open-minded, and she's just a very positive person.
Both kind of talked about just that the community and how important it is. And I know there's probably a struggle with this whole idea of cutting your camera on, right? Everybody wants the camera on. And I know, like, seeing you all, we're on camera. My first time meeting you, and I already feel so connected just by the stories you're telling and just what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So I know it's also important for us to model that, for our students to see us, to have that one thing that they know they're going to come on and they see us teaching. But I wonder, and I'm gonna throw this out there to Jamie and Sherry about just what are some specific strategies that you can share on how you ensure that your students do turn their cameras on during a lesson, and what are some areas of why this is challenging for you as you teach every day?
Sure. I can begin. You know, this was really a big internal struggle that I had even in the spring as well. And through the summer, I really thought about it. What am I going to do with this? Because, you know, in the spring, it didn't really happen that much. And then I really had to have a heart to heart with myself. And I had to ask myself, why? Like, why do I want them to have those cameras on? Like, what is the purpose, or how is that going to serve the students? And at the very beginning, my answer was, I want it for myself. I want it because I am uncomfortable teaching to names on a screen. I am uncomfortable with students being on mute. And I realized that that wasn't a strong enough reason for me to have to, you know, to find ways for them to turn on their cameras. So then I started thinking, how is this going to benefit the students? And as you said, Dr. White, that the students feel that community when they do see each other. So while it has been a struggle in high school to get them on, and I really don't force students to have them on, I have become comfortable teaching to a class where all students have their cameras off, but I find different ways for them to find that community. There are some games that I play sometimes at the beginning of class. There was one that was really popular in my class where the students held up a notebook in front of their face. I gave them a random item, or another classmate gave them a random item, and they had to draw the item without looking at it. And then we voted on the best drawing. And so that kind of broke the ice a little bit. It made students a little bit more comfortable. And I did notice that little games like that, spending 10, 15 minutes at the beginning of class, breaking that ice, resulted in a few more students having cameras on, and a few more students unmuting themselves instead of typing in the chat. But really, I think as a teacher, you really have to ask yourself, what is your why? What is the reason? And if it's only for yourself, I think that we need to rethink our why and why we want those cameras on from the students.
She's absolutely right. I think also we have to understand that students will turn their cameras on as their comfort level increases. Just today, a student turned her camera on and I was so excited. You would have thought, I was like, oh, Zoe, how are you? Because she felt comfortable enough to turn it on, and I was just so elated. And so you celebrate those you see and you celebrate those you don't see. And as time goes on, they will turn their cameras on. You do show and tell, you do show and see. But you do have to understand, and you have to be patient and understand that it is a process. But I believe that, as time moves on, because I've seen it in my class, they do get more comfortable and they will turn their cameras on.
And so you celebrate those you see.
Yeah.
Celebrate those that you don't.
Yeah.
Because we care about every last one of them, right? So the camera is just one thing, but it doesn't take away the value of what each of them brings every day. I love that.
I just want to add how important the chat is as well. It's a great way to get that feedback from students as well, using the chat box.
And what's so moving about this is I'm still stuck on that too, Judy. Celebrating who you can see and who you cannot see.
Absolutely.
But even in celebrating them, what you said to me, what you both have said actually, you're still staying connected with the students.
Absolutely.
So even though I can't see you, I'm still connecting with you. So I'm not looking at you as being that student that's absent from my class because I'm keeping the connection and engagement ongoing. Thank you. Appreciate that. Ready for our students?
I just wanted to say, it helps when you get to know your students a little bit more. It seems like students are a lot more willing to participate and, put on their camera, turn on their mic and answer when you try to get to know them a little bit better. That way you understand if the student may have missed a lesson or they missed an assignment. Understand a lot more like where they're coming from rather than just be like, oh my goodness, why did you miss this? You can't make it up. That way you guys can create this middle ground and there won't be any miscommunication with any.
Now this is where I'm really excited because I've heard about all of these different digital learning tools that I have never heard of myself. And I could not wait for this moment so that you all could share with me, with us, Judy and myself, some of the things that you're currently using in your classroom. Now, Jamie, I understand that you utilize something in your classroom, a digital learning tool, referred to as Flipgrid. So could you tell us a little bit about Flipgrid?
Yeah, absolutely. I love Flipgrid. We've used Flipgrid even before the pandemic started. We use Flipgrid because we want our students to practice speaking their English. Since I do teach to English language learners, it's super important for them to get the speaking practice as well. And so Flipgrid has been sort of phenomenal during distance learning because a lot of them are not getting that practice of English in the classroom. And so I use Flipgrid a lot to get my English language learners practicing speaking their English. And so some of the strategies that I have found have helped my students be more successful with Flipgrid. Number one is to always record yourself and model, what you want them to do. And so Flipgrid gives you the option to put in video directions instead of written directions. And I think every teacher should take those 5 minutes to just record themselves. Number one, the students, have that connection with you. When they see your face, they are comfortable with you. And listening to directions is much better for students than maybe reading directions that they might miss something, they might miss a step. So recording yourself is my number one tip for that. Secondly, is to give students a script. Some students might need, sentence starters. Some students might just need the questions for how to begin, and then they can answer those questions in the video. But giving them that script so that they know what to say, so that they don't feel like I can't do this, I think is really helpful. Finally, I think just keeping it consistent, giving students, if we're going to use Flipgrid as our, voice speaking practice, we're going to use Flipgrid. I know we talked a little bit about just being fatigued with so many of these new, these new tools. And so staying and using Flipgrid, because Flipgrid has so many features. Students can share their screen, students can do split screen, they can do a whiteboard. So it's even really good when they're explaining math. They can explain the steps they took to, complete an assignment. So Flipgrid is great, phenomenal. If you haven't checked it out, definitely, try to use it in your classroom.
About just flipping something.
No, not flipping.
About which students can learn. And I like that because sounds like you're differentiating
the
instructional delivery process. I think that is phenomenal. Thank you for sharing that.
Let's hear more about that engagement tool.
Hi, my name is Allegra Brown, and I'm an ESOL teacher at Mary Harris Mother Jones Elementary School. One of my favorite learning tools for distance learning has been Flipgrid. It's a great way to assess and examine what the students can do at an independent level without our coaching. Especially useful for the ESOL students who are a little timid and don't really speak up during our Zoom or Google Meet classes. So it allows us to see exactly where they are and what we can support them in. Well, I would highly recommend that you engage your students by submitting your own videos when you create a topic in Flipgrid. I've noticed when it's either myself or a colleague in a Flipgrid video for the students to watch before they practice their video, it increases engagement because they see the teacher modeling and demonstrating by doing the exact expectation they are supposed to execute themselves. So I have 3 S's for success when creating a Flipgrid video for your students. Number 1, set the purpose. Number 2, set the stage. And number 3, salute. Set the purpose. State your objective for your video at the beginning and the end of your lesson. Couple that with the academic vocabulary you want your students to use. Display it on the whiteboard. Find it on a piece of paper and write it and show it on your screen. Or if you can, display it on your screen. Number 2, set the stage. Be as expressive as possible. Your students will match your energy. So they need to see and have you model and demonstrate by doing what it is that you want them to do in their own videos. Don't be afraid to use manipulatives and resources around you to make your video come to life. Your students will match your creativity. Number 3, salute. Don't be afraid to celebrate your students and share what they have done well with their classmates. Ask them for permission to share their video displayed in the class Zoom or Google Meet. Also, make sure that you can leave videos of verbal feedback for the students so that they can hear things that they've done well and things that they can grow in independently on their Flipgrid. So remember, to have success in Flipgrid, follow the 3 S's, set the purpose, set the stage, and salute.
Well, Helen, you wanted to know about Flipgrid. I heard about Pear Deck, and I was like, what in the world is Pear Deck? And so I want Xavier and Sherry to share with me a little bit about Pear Deck.
I'll go first. So Peer Deck, I think, is a phenomenal tool. And one of the, I think the greatest benefit of using Peer Deck is that it allows you the ability to have real-time feedback, which is so very important in the classroom. But I use Peer Deck, but I also use another application. I use Seesaw. Seesaw is probably, next to Google Classroom, my main communication tool. Seesaw also allows me the opportunity to have real-time feedback, but it also gives me the opportunity to front load my assignments for the students so that when I'm delivering a lesson, they have a student companion right there next to them, and they're able to work alongside me as I'm delivering a lesson. So that's, to me, the thing that is the most important as we are in this distance learning environment. We have to allow students to put their work to paper, and we need to provide them with forms of feedback. In this case, the paper's digital, whatever it might be, but it has to happen because kids need authentic feedback. That's how you move learning forward. And so whatever way, if it's through Peer Deck, if it's through Seesaw, if it's through Google Slides, but they need that feedback.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with what Sherry is saying. And Pear Deck for me has just been absolutely phenomenal. I myself didn't use it prior to the pandemic, but as Sherry said, when we talk about instant feedback, and for me, that's so important because I'm usually dealing with such large groups of students. So if, for instance, I'm in a class and I'm progressing with my lesson, I want a really quick informal assessment before I move on to the next area of the lesson to make sure that the students have that. I can make a quick multiple choice question. They can answer it, boom, I have that automatic instant feedback right there to me. Or if I'm doing something, for instance, if I have a lesson with rhythm, let's say I'm teaching quarter notes and eighth notes and quarter rest. And so we're doing rhythmic dictation where I may clap a rhythm or play a rhythm on an instrument. And those students have to tell me what notes they heard, or did they hear the silence in the music as well. I'm able to see that because they're able to just put it down, they submit it, and boom, it's right there. So I can see who's getting it and who's not automatically. I love it.
Sounds like it affords you the opportunity as well to continue to check for understanding. So you know if your students are getting it. Mm-hmm. And then you know as the teacher what to do if they are not.
Precisely.
PowerPoint, Google Slides, Nearpod, Smart, Pear Deck. Oh my! There are lots of presentation tools to choose from, but why choose Pear Deck? Are you already using Google Slides to share presentations with students? If so, add Pear Deck. Pear Deck works seamlessly with Google Slides. Create interactive, engaging activities for students with draggable slides or drawings to choose a response. Design your own activities or choose from Pear Deck's template gallery. Meet the academic and emotional needs of your students by using Pear Deck's social emotional template slides to include in your presentation. Similar to Nearpod, Pear Deck allows teachers to adjust the lesson from teacher-led to student-paced. Student feedback and responses are visible through the teacher dashboard during a lesson or afterwards. Learn more about Pear Deck to see if it's a choice you'd make to engage your students.
So Nikki, you're going to share with us and tell us a little bit about how you utilize Nearpod in your classroom. It is amazing, these names of these schools, but they obviously are working quite well.
Well, I absolutely love Nearpod. It is very compatible for the subject that I teach. It's financial literacy for teens, but it's really compatible for any subject. The thing that I like about it is you can create your slides either in Google or PowerPoint, or you can create your slides in Nearpod. And when you upload them, they come in individual slides. And you can just drop your engagement activities in, and your students and your are able to engage as you teach. Or if you need to, once again, provide work for students that maybe had a tech issue, or maybe the parents need to do some additional supports at home, you can also give them a student-paced version as well. And they can still go right into the lesson that you taught for that day. And everything is very interactive and engaged. It provides different opportunities for math and literacy. And I just love it. You can incorporate web resources from different websites. You can incorporate visuals. It has games. You can even put a quiz in there to evaluate your students. And I have found it to be very compatible with the 5E lesson plan format, because you can just kind of go in and set your slides up, and then actually go in and put in activities that your kids can do that follow that template that we use in the county. And I just think it's an excellent tool to use, and it's actually pretty easy to use too.
The engagement tool was so powerful. It really embraced the needs of students. So I'm anxious to hear more about that one.
And my name is Miss Guy Dixon, and I am going to show you how to use Nearpod in your classroom for student engagement. So here is a lesson that I have, and I have some students that have volunteered to show you how we use Nearpod in our classroom. So you can have polls, and you can see if students are participating in the poll, and you can incorporate this directly into your lesson, your Nearpod lesson. That's one engagement activity. You can also put in writing prompts or open-ended questions, and you can set a timer and track your student engagement with your students to see how many students are participating, and just to see who hasn't participated. And the great thing about this is you can actually grade work right from here, just to see if your students are completing the assignments. Another great engagement activity that you can add is the collaboration board. And Nearpod provides all of these engagement activities, and all you have to do is just put them directly into your lesson. And your students can even go back and like each other's responses. And you, as the teacher, can also like their responses. And you can also incorporate videos for your lessons that your students can watch and see. And Nearpod has a vast library of lessons to choose from, or you can put your own videos in. And you can even put other web sources in, or websites to use to incorporate into your daily classroom. And your students can interact and play games independently or as a class. Ms. Young, can you please demonstrate how we played this as a whole group?
Diego, hate to be, need to borrow $7,000. My Uncle Murph had just passed away and didn't leave enough money to cover his funeral. Who knew caskets were so expensive?
And so this is an example of how we use the chat box and Nearpod to play a game for financial literacy. And so as you can see, students are in the chat box responding, while Nevaeh, who is basically facilitating the game, is telling me, the teacher, which answer they want to choose.
I'm kind of speechless right now because I almost would like to be a student in your individual classrooms myself. We think about that so much. You all are saying such great things that even in the midst of what we are experiencing, it still can be done. Mm-hmm. And you all are doing it so well. Mm-hmm. Judy, would you have expected to hear all of this, Judy?
No, not to this level, and not to the level that they've really worked to figure it out. You know, it's like it didn't have to start this way, but over time they've done the work to figure it out for our students. So it's overwhelming to some degree.
And I say this only because some of the things that I've heard them say, it's as if we're still in the classroom.
Yeah.
You know, we're doing things virtually, but it's some of the same types of things that we would have done in the classroom that you figured out how to continue in the absence of them being there, but in the presence of them being virtual learners.
Yeah.
So astounding. This is really good. And I'm certain that everyone that's listening is feeling the same way as we. What do you think, Judy?
I do. I agree. And I think that they picked up some tips, and they probably have some additional tips that they could share, but I'm sure there's some who have picked up some today.
Which brings me to this final question. And this is for anyone that would choose to add on to this. Knowing what you now know, what are you most looking forward to in distance learning? Or what words or advice would you give to other Prince George's County teachers in navigating distance learning?
If I could give one bit of wisdom, it would be
it's 4 o'clock.
Understand that you're human, and also understand that you're going to make mistakes, but we're teachers. And like we tell our students, when they make mistakes or they get a question wrong, we try again, we go back at it again, we come up with another strategy. We always keep working to be better and better, and it all will work out.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that comment.
I would say, you know, embrace it all. For the math teachers, I would say embrace the instructional guide, embrace Speak Agent, embrace Mobius Math, embrace big ideas, embrace it all. And I would also say this, you know, show up and teach. The children need that consistency right now. They really do. And also, I would also say, you know, find out what works every day and build on it. And you do that. You know that. You're teachers, you do that, and you already know that. But just continually do it. I think in the end, we're going to all be much better because of this situation.
I agree with that.
And I think it's important for teachers to be transparent with their students, transparent with the families, because, you know, like Mr. Jones said, we are human and we make mistakes. And just saying, oops, you know, being transparent. And if you need help, to also reach out to your colleagues and build on that like rapport that we did have in the buildings. You know, we still have that. We just have to create it in a virtual setting.
Just to kind of piggyback on what Catherine said, that what she just said is one of the biggest things that I learned from going through the National Board Teaching Certification process. I didn't know about having a professional learning community, but this is the ideal time to build on that because you can touch people beyond your building. I can reach my colleagues at this high school, that high school, contact them and say, hey, what's working for you? Can you share with me? Can you virtually connect with me in a Zoom meeting and show me how to do this thing that's working so great in your class? Can you help me out? I think that connection helps teachers to realize that you're not in it by yourself. The same way that our students are struggling with isolation, quite often teachers feel that way too. So don't feel like you don't have someone to connect to that understands what you're dealing with and maybe can provide some help for you. And another thing that I want to say is it's so much information and it's so many choices. And it's okay not to know everything that we talked about. But if you can find one thing that works for you, like Sherry said, find that one thing that works for you and build on that. And don't be afraid to ask your students for their input because they'll let you know if they love it or if they hate it. And that might be the one thing that will help you to connect to the students and make your job a little bit more easier virtually.
Thank you.
And for me, I would tell the teachers to try, to fail, and to try again. I mean, that's the nature of our job. We're going to try new things. We're going to be exposed to new experiences. If we fail, it's okay. You know, as Catherine said, we're transparent with the students and we'd say, hey, this didn't really work. We're going to try again in a different way, in a different format. And so just being open to changing, being open to making different lessons in a different way than you're used to, being open to trying new strategies, trying different ways to do things. I think that's one of the key things in this moment is just to try new things. It's a time to experiment and to see what's going to work for all of us.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you. You all are just phenomenal. I can't say it enough. I know I've said it several times during the course of today's conversation with you all, but you all are doing some great things. We commend you for the great work you're continuing to do. I know that our CEO, Dr. Golson, is going to be very proud of what she's going to hear in terms of what you all have shared and how you're making it work during this time. Judy?
Powerful.
Yeah.
Like, I am overjoyed and honored that we're colleagues, that you touch our students every day, and you just you are a representation of the teachers in our district. So we know that what we've seen today doesn't rest with just you five, but what we've seen today is what's taking place in our classrooms across this district.
Wasn't it great today to actually hear from the experts from the field that are making this happen each and every day?
Yeah.
This was great. And we know that everyone out there has their own level of expertise as to what you're doing in the classroom. We just wanted to showcase a few of our rock stars here in Prince George's County Public Schools. And we thank you so much for everything that you've done to continue to keep the rigor and instructional learning environment for our students in the way that you have. I hope that you have been able to take something from what they've shared on today to empower your classroom. Being a lifelong learner and a teacher myself, I will always say that I'm a teacher. I certainly heard some things today that I could utilize in the classroom and in my work today.
And after this session, you will have an opportunity to learn more about not only the tools that were shared today, but some actually new tools. You'll be able to join some sessions on those, but you'll also have a chance to join some content sessions where they too will talk about engagement through content. And so, as Helen has said, thank you for coming into our fireside chat and listening and participating with us. And we just know that not only when we come out of this will we be PGCPS strong, we know that each of you has made us PGCPS proud.
Yes.
Wonderful.
I hope that you have enjoyed today as much as we both have enjoyed sharing this information with you. Have a great holiday break and utilize that time to get some well-deserved rest. We thank you so much for today.
Bye-bye.